We all rely on farmers and ranchers, but farming is riskier than other businesses out there. Crop insurance helps farmers manage their risk. With crop insurance, farmers put skin in the game by paying premiums and shouldering deductibles. That keeps taxpayers from having to pick up the whole bill every time disaster strikes. Today, about 90% of U.S. farmland is insured, providing $100 billion in protection to more than 130 different kinds of crops. It's a testament to the program's success.
Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse's Phil Brasher, as well as this week by Nebraska Senate Republican Deb Fischer. And Senator Fischer, we appreciate you joining us.
Oh, great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
For starters, want to talk about something that's been in the works for a couple of weeks here, and that is, of course, yesterday's hearing in the Senate Agriculture Committee focusing on beef cattle marketing issues, that price transparency and price discovery conversation that's been really in the works for quite some time. Obviously, this is a hearing a lot of folks were calling for. A lot of different legislative approaches have been suggested. You have a bill that I'm sure you're partial to on the subject, but I suppose my question for you is, we looked at this hearing and saw that some of the division that we've had within the industry in terms of the approach going forward is still present. There was some differing testimony that we heard at this hearing. From the chair that you're sitting in, where do we go from here on this issue?
Well, obviously, this is a big issue. I'm a cattle rancher. I hear from my family, my neighbors, ranchers all across the state. I happen to represent a state that has all segments of the industry, from cow-calf and backgrounding and large and small feedlots, and we have 3 of the 4 big packers there. So I want everybody to be successful. But what we're seeing right now are a lot of issues where you have packers making a lot of money and consumers having to pay a lot of money for good beef. But that's not coming back to the cow-calf producer or the feedlot, the family rancher who's trying to make a living on it. So we wrote a bill last year, and we introduced it again this year. It's bipartisan. It's great. I'll talk about it with you. But, it's a great bill. And I think what we saw at the hearing, I felt that there was more consensus among members on the committee, among senators on the committee. We heard some positive remarks about a contract library, which is in my bill, to be able to have more transparency, to have that contract library. We talked a lot about having the cash sales, so you can know what that base price is, and so people can make wise market decisions to have that information. So I felt we had a good hearing, and visiting with many of my colleagues afterwards, they felt that way too. And now we're trying to figure out how we can craft legislation to bring our different views together and get something done.
Senator, thanks for being with us. The administration's putting a lot of emphasis on trying to expand meat processing capacity in order to give more market to producers. I've been in that Cargill plant in Schuyler, Nebraska. It's a huge operation, a lot of capital invested in a plant like that. How optimistic are you that it's going to be possible to get the kind of capital that to seriously expand processing capacity, to address the pricing issue that way?
Yeah, that would help to be able to expand that capacity. As I said, we have 3 of the 4 big packers in the state of Nebraska with those big plants like the one you were at in Schuyler. But we're also seeing in Nebraska moves to have more local capacity, local packing plants. In fact, there's a group of investors that have come together. They're in the process of getting through permitting and things to be able to build a smaller plant in the North Platte area. I hear that from some of my colleagues as well. Senator Gillibrand, was talking about the dairy herds that she has in her state, and to be able to have different local food processing, to be able to do that. So I think we're going to see more of that. That helps with local markets, to be able to have that local source of food and be able to provide that for local ranchers But when you're talking about, feeding the whole country, feeding the world, Nebraska does a great job with exporting our beef. You still need to have those big packers too. And that's why it's important that we do work to find that transparency and the information that is needed to make good decisions. We cannot ignore that part of this equation just because there's going to be other packing plants that are going to be built.
Senator, let's switch gears here for a moment to the Growing Climate Solutions Act, which the Senate just passed 92-8. This is a fairly landmark bill when it comes to climate policy. It would require USDA to start certifying credit verifiers and technical advisors in an effort to speed the development of ag carbon markets. Some conservatives over the House and here in the Senate said that this bill is unnecessary, that the government doesn't need to get involved in these markets. It's not a place for the government. Tell us why you decided to vote for it.
I'm an original co-sponsor. I was one of Senator Braun's, I think I was his first Republican co-sponsor, but I know I was the first Republican on the committee to co-sponsor it. It has a lot of support across the state of Nebraska. It has a lot of support in the Senate. It passed 92-8. Only 3 Republicans voted against it, 5 Democrats. But to be able to address changes that we're seeing in our climate, but to do so in what I say is a responsible manner where you are very cognizant of the effects any kind of policy changes will have on producers, but also on the economy of states and of this country. One thing that I'm focused on is watching to make sure that our farmers who have done such a wonderful job in conservation methods over many, many decades, that they're recognized for this, that they aren't left out because people are looking at the next thing. So in fact, it's one of the things I brought to the attention of Secretary Vilsack. When no-till's been used for over 50 years, and some segments of our population think it's a new thing, let's not forget these farmers, in some cases, generations of farmers, family farmers, who have used that practice and have been very successful in their conservation methods. So as we move through the entire discussion on what these policies should be moving forward, again, we need to balance that. We need to make sure that the economy is not hurt. We need to make sure that individual producers are not hurt, but also to recognize the great stewardship that we see with our ag producers already. That's an important part of this.
I want to switch to infrastructure here at the end. Another issue that you've been involved with over in the Commerce Committee. There's been these talks. They say they have a framework now, an agreement with the White House. I believe it's about $1.2 trillion in spending. That's a lot more than Republicans started out wanting to spend. What's your view of that? Then we want to ask you about what they follow from this as the Democrats want.
Yeah, infrastructure is in my DNA. And my dad worked for the Department of Roads for the state of Nebraska his entire career. I chaired the committee in the Nebraska legislature for 6 of my 8 years that dealt with transportation and telecommunication issues. So I'm a huge supporter of infrastructure. I want to be able to support this bill. It is important to have this investment in the future of this country, but I also want to see the bill. We haven't seen anything on paper yet, any details on paper. And I'm rather old school. I believe you need to read a bill and see what's in it before, just because it says it's an infrastructure bill, before you jump on something. But I feel good about the fact that my colleagues on both sides of the aisle have come together on it. I worked with Senator Capito a little bit on her proposal with some ideas that I had, and was disappointed when that failed. So I have colleagues at the White House, I think right now, that are meeting with President Biden, and hopefully we'll have more of the details and see if this bill is truly going to address traditional core infrastructure, first of all, and we all know what that is. It's roads and bridges and waterways and transmission lines and airports and ports and broadband. That's what I'm looking for. And then I want to see what the pay-fors are, so we can make sure that we will pay for this huge investment that we'll be making for our country.
And quickly to wrap things up here, Senator, so what we're hearing right now, and as you mentioned, still looking for some details, but what we're hearing right now is that this legislation will be involved in some kind of a two-track system with the more traditional infrastructure in one bill and the other, the social infrastructure, as the White House and Capitol Hill Democrats put it, in a separate piece that would move through the reconciliation package. Your thoughts on that approach and whether the simultaneous push for that reconciliation package might potentially cause some concern for folks that might be otherwise willing to consider this bipartisan infrastructure bill?
Yeah, I'm not going to make a deal saying that I'll vote for both of these bills. Obviously, I'm going to have an issue with the reconciliation, as I think most Republicans will, because when you're talking, I think that package is adding more to the cost of things. As we see inflation grow, that's going to continue to be a problem for families here in this country. But yeah, I haven't heard of any kind of deal on this. I have heard Senator Schumer talk about that he wants these two to move together, that they have to move together. Yeah, I'm not for that. I am for traditional infrastructure and looking at pay-fors and not tax increases, which I assume the reconciliation bill will be using for pay-fors. And you talk about tax increases, some of the ideas that have been put out there with capital gains, stepped up basis. I mean, this will decimate rural America. This will hurt family farms and ranches and businesses, but it's also going to hurt people who are in the suburbs, who are in the cities, because they have a home. They bought a home, and if they've lived in this home for 30, 40 years and raised a family, and then they sell it thinking it's going to provide for their retirement, and find out that all that equity is going to go to taxes, we need to remind homeowners that all these changes to the tax code that some of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle are proposing are not good for families.
Senator Fischer, as you and I discussed before we pressed record here on a Thursday afternoon, it was a busy day to wrap up a busy week in the United States Senate. And we at Agri-Pulse appreciate you stopping by to join us and discuss it just a little bit.
I loved it. Thank you. It's great.
For Senator Deb Fischer and Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.